Welcome to episode 2 of my new podcast, Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. I know it's been a while since the first episode launched, but it's been very, very busy with the launch of my new book, Navigation and Discovery, which is now available, and you can get your copy today at CameronSinghBook.com. If you didn't get the chance to catch the last episode, it was with my great and dear mentor Eric, and we talked about was an episode where we truly reflected on our mentor-mentee relationship for almost over a decade. So it was a great discussion that we had, so feel free to catch the first episode of the podcast. So this podcast is really where people are going to share their stories of how they continue to navigate and discover through their journey of life. And, one of those stories is my story, which is really the purpose why I wrote the book, Navigation and Discovery, a path of navigating and discovering through your journey of faith. So on today's podcast, episode 2, one of my good friends, Travis, who is the co-host of the Leadership Download, he is my co-host of the Leadership Download podcast. He actually interviews me on this podcast, and we go through really the heart behind the book, Navigation and Discovery. So it is an awesome discussion that we have about why I wrote the book, the heart behind it, and how faith is a part of my life and how I want to help others. So I really hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Feel free, give a nice review on whichever platform you're listening to, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Really would greatly appreciate it. And if you find this podcast valuable to you and you think it needs to be shared, please share it. Share it on your social media platforms and help get this word out. Really appreciate your support and really appreciate your time in listening to this podcast. And I really hope it adds value to your life and that you're able to learn from not only my story, but other people's stories. So enjoy this podcast.
Well, hey, Cameron, man, it's exciting to finally get to sit down and discuss your new book. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, Travis?
I'm doing great. So Navigation and Discovery. I've been hearing about this book for quite a while now. What made you want to write this book? This is your first book. What motivated you to write this one?
Yeah, that's a good question, Travis. Well, this journey really started when I pursued education in executive leadership. Actually, it was something that an area that I wanted to learn about. And I remember the first week of orientation when I went to start the program. I remember one of the seniors, we got to know each other, and one thing he mentioned was, you have to write a book. You have to write not just one book, but multiple books. And that just kind of stuck to me. And throughout this program, they were always talking about, what are you going to do to add to the leadership body of knowledge? What are you going to do to be that practitioner and continue to be a steward of leadership? And so that got me thinking, throughout my journey of that program. And then once I finished the program, I actually had moved abroad at the time, and this idea was just marinating in me, but I just didn't have the time to put pen to paper really, and even think about what I wanted to write about. I knew I wanted to write about my story, but I didn't know what, and I guess it's because the story was still developing at the time. So I initially was starting to search different publishers, and all of them were just crazy expensive. And it was pretty much, you do your manuscript and you just turn it in and they do the rest for you. And I really didn't want that. I really didn't like that. I wanted to have something a bit more meaningful. And so I came across a mutual friend of ours now, and that has a publishing company, Sam Chan and Martijn Van Tilburg. And they were talking about that they have a publishing company and they help publish your message pretty much. And that really hit home for me because it had more meaning to it. It was just not about, hey, turn in your manuscript, give us a lot of money, and we'll make your book go live. So I chatted with them and I had my outline. Oh, actually, with the outline. So I wrote the outline I'm like, this is going to be a 4-part book. It's going to be an amazing book about, pretty much my entire 20s,
Mm.
and maybe a little bit of high school. And I was like, oh, this is going to be an amazing book. And I show it to the publisher. I was so excited. And they're like, no, you have 4 books. I'm like, geez, I just wanted one. So we turned it, we took a portion of the outline and made that as one book. So, and really the purpose I wanted to do is really help share my story. And because I know, Travis, you and I have had both experiences that I feel like a lot of young people um really don't have traditionally. And
Mm.
I wanted to share that story, some life lessons, and truly how faith was a part of that journey as well. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's get into the book a little bit, and I'll kind of let you be in the driver's seat here. So tell us a little bit about your journey so far in navigation and discovery.
Yeah, so actually, backtrack a little bit. The title of this book came at the ninth hour. I finished the manuscript and I had no idea for the title. The publisher kept asking me, "What's your title? What's your title?" I'm like, "I don't know. I never even thought about that." One morning I woke up and I don't know. It was just like the only 2 words that were on my mind was navigation and discovery. So that morning, I sent the publisher, "Hey, let's do the title something like Navigation and Discovery." I think I punted it your way too, Travis, right? That
Yeah.
that morning, I was like, "Navigation Discovery." I don't know where this is gonna go, but we'll figure it all out. But really, navigation and discovery is, we go through this journey of life, and we're trying to navigate and discover, who we are, what's our purpose, what's our calling. And I feel like that changes throughout our journey. We might have plan A, but actually plan B happens, then plan C doesn't work out, then you're down to plan like Z.
Mm.
It's always changing. You never can predict what's going to happen next. And I feel like throughout my journey so far, um, in life, it's all been about, there's been a lot of unexpected things that have come my way, but through that journey, I've been able to navigate somehow by the grace of God, in both good times, bad times, difficult times, and discovering who I truly am, and what my purpose and calling is. If you talked to me about 5, maybe 7 years ago, I probably did not know what my true purpose and calling is. I was just kind of moving through the motions, what we're traditionally supposed to be doing, graduate school, go through the motions, and, have that career. Well, for us, it was, or for me, in the aviation industry. So I feel like, that story never ends really. And so I think where I'm at right now in terms of navigation discovery, still and still trying to navigate and discover
Mm.
what my purpose and calling is. And I think it's a journey that never ends. You're never going to know what your true purpose and calling is. It's always going to change. There's always going to be the next thing. There's always going to be uh the next something. And so I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what's the next something in kind of my journey.
You mentioned there about understanding your purpose, and that would definitely will often not trigger, but it often perks people's interest because there is such a struggle in trying to find your purpose. What would what should people be looking for when they're talking about trying to understand their purpose?
I think one of the things, and so this book, I didn't want to, be the 10 steps to success in your life, find your
Hmm.
purpose and calling. This is how to do it. That's not really it. And I actually talk about the introduction. This is, sharing my story, and I hope you learn from it and have good
Yeah.
takeaways. And so I think what's helped me into when we talk about purpose, passion, and calling is staying true to yourself, knowing who you are as a person, and not trying to play that comparison game. Because I think early on, especially when I stepped into a leadership role, I was always comparing, "Ooh, I want to be like that person. I want to be just like that person. I want to go through that career path that this person went through." And I was always comparing, and at some point, it was actually as an influential person in one of the companies that I work with came up to me, is like, "Hey, you're not mini this person. You are
Mm.
your own person. You have to be true to yourself and know who you are, and you have to know that you are unique." Um, because it's your uniqueness. When you hone in on you're unique, you're not the odd one out. I think every person is unique in their own way. And once you start cherishing that and staying true to yourself, and I think that's truly the way to find what you're called to do. If you're trying to be like someone else, imitate someone, you might not get to your purpose and calling for a while.
Yeah, that's so true. So talking about navigation is just before we move on, talking about navigation. One of the things I've noticed in my life, and one of my mentors always tells me is, the way you think you're going to accomplish something often is not the way you're going to accomplish that. And I know there's a couple of examples of that in the book of where you maybe set out to try to reach a goal, and you thought you had a picture of what it looked like in your head, but once you arrived at what you think was that goal, it looked nothing like that. Do you have any examples like that?
Yeah, it was probably all of the leadership roles that I've had in the past. It's I was striving for this leadership, several leadership roles, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be so awesome! Once I achieve that role, it's going to be the best thing ever." And come day one, sitting in that chair, and all you feel is just stress, anxiety, loss of sleep. And you're like, well, why did I want to do this? But I think what helped keep me at least centered is I really like loving on people, helping people. I'm a huge introvert, but when I'm in an environment when there's people surrounding me, is I love helping people. And I'm very intentional when it comes to people. It doesn't matter what their background is, who they are, whether they don't like me. That's been something that has been my focus in everything that I've done. But it's interesting because, I don't know what I think in terms of navigating towards these roles, I was seeking self-fulfillment from these roles. And these roles never fulfilled me. And so I was like, if I'm not fulfilled at these leadership roles, then why would I
Mm.
want to strive for even higher? And so that's why, you know, Travis, we started working on this podcast, uh, podcast, doing leadership stuff on the side, writing a book. And that, because that's what gives me self-fulfillment, is doing that type of stuff, because we're making impact. And sometimes it's difficult in roles and, just a traditional job to make that impact. But when you are living in your purpose, and sometimes that could be hard, especially if you have, other responsibilities. But living in your purpose, living in your calling, and truly living that out. And I think I'm on the cusp of that, but we'll see how that journey of navigation discovery goes.
Speaking about, you don't know how the journey is going to go. You probably never imagined being business partners with a big white guy from North Carolina, and I
No.
never envisioned being partnered with an Indian guy from San Francisco. So I mean, the navigation of life is so amazing. Just the journey itself is so interesting. So not getting hung up in like it not going exactly the way you think it is going to be the way you're going to move forward the fastest, right? You're going to move
Mhm.
forward and you're going to have that flexibility. So, in your professional career, you've stuck to aviation for majority of it. How and why did you decide to pursue an aviation career?
Well, so I grew up in the Bay Area in San Bruno, California. And that's the city right by San Francisco International Airport. And so from our house, we had a good view of the airplanes taking off out to the Pacific Ocean. So I got to see all the jumbo jets taking off and the private jets. And yeah, I just loved hearing the airplane noise. And my parents used to take us out in the waterfront. We used to watch the airplanes land over there by the Marriott in Burlingame. And I just fell in love with airplanes, just being around it all the time. My dad worked at the airport at the and still does actually. So, we would visit sometimes, and I just loved going to the airport. I just loved. I even recall when the San Francisco International Terminal opened. Me and my grandpa, we went and visited the terminal on the
Mm.
grand opening because he knew I was fascinated, and I still vividly, now that I think about it, I still vividly remember us standing in the brand new international terminal when it opened, and I fell in love with airplanes, and so I work in the private jet side, and I remember one day he took me to the place that I started in the industry. I remember that one day because I remember on my first day when I interviewed for that job, I'm like, this place looks so familiar. And I remember vividly the day that my grandpa took me over there into the
Mm.
parking lot of that executive terminal, looking at what are these little nice looking airplanes that now I know as private jets. So always intrigued. Well, initially I wanted to fly, but due to the cost of trading and stuff like that, that wasn't going to be possible. So I kind of found a good niche in the private jet
Mm.
area.
That's awesome. It's an amazing industry to work in. It's challenging, but it's amazing industry to work in. It's obviously taught you some lessons. What are some things you've learned from your time in aviation?
I think what I've learned is people are different. uh, and I know that's very vague, but I think my experience in aviation, I that's where I actually got all my work experience. I learned how to deliver customer service. I learned how to handle difficult issues. I learned how to work just with people. And so I think just navigating through working in different environments, the environments that I've had experience in, and even a short term abroad experience, is I think it's more of learning to appreciate people for who they are, and just loving on them. And oftentimes we're so focused on the business, trying to get things done, and people would argue for like little things and at work. I'm like, it's not worth it. We're all
Hmm.
just people, just get along, even with customers. And I think appreciate people for who they are, and continue to love them, and continue to give it your all in each of your relationships and any person you encounter. And I think that's what I've learned throughout, especially being primarily in a customer service based role, is having intentionality with people. Because I got to meet quite a bit of people over the years. Some were nobodies, some were somebodies, some were folks on TV. And I treated everyone the same, no matter
Mm.
whether it's a celebrity or you're my coworker. And and I really think that was mainly rooted in my upbringing with my parents, is learning to treat everyone equally and welcoming people as they are.
So faith is an important part of your journey. How has that impacted your journey of navigation and discovery so far?
Yeah, I remember reflecting on this when writing on it, because I actually had to talk to my mom to clarify the story to make sure I got it right, and I hope I got it right in the book. But so faith actually was rooted in my family through my mom. So she, and you'll read this in the book, so probably giving too much away, but that's fine. So she grew up in Fiji, and the only school that was closest to where they lived was a Christian school. So her side of the family was Hindu at the time, and so she had no choice but to go to a Christian school. And so she
Mm.
went to the Christian school and started understanding who God is and what faith is all about. And then she accepted Christ into her life, got baptized, and then through that she shared the message with my grandparents and her parents. And so they also came to know Christ and um, accepted God as their Lord and Savior, and ever since. And so it's really been through my mom taking us to church really every Sunday, even the Sundays that I didn't want to go, making sure we were well dressed, hair was combed and stuff like that. And but I think faith, I never really understood what it was. It was mainly like going through the motions growing up, because we talked about the Bible stories in Sunday school, was in a pretty good community. But I really I still didn't really understand what faith was all about. And it wasn't until I probably moved out of the house and, went to college and experienced living on your own, enjoying the freedoms, is faith was always there, but I never really knew that it was there. And questions have come up over the years, but now that I look back, it's faith was always there, even when I didn't know it was there.
Mm,
And um and all the stars are aligning, in areas where I might have not been as trustworthy with God. It was because he was developing me. He was working something in me to that would help me go through different experiences that I've experienced over the years, whether it was personally, professionally, medically. And so I feel like he was preparing me for always the next thing. And so, in those difficult times, it really helped me grow. But I think the most challenging was being in the what I call, those mountaintop phases, right? Where, things are just going good. Just got this job and, stuff like that, is I think lacking the appreciation from God and then taking things for granted.
mm,
And then you just feel that emptiness.
mm,
So just counting your blessings every day, and having faith as a part of, I wouldn't say regimen, but a part of your daily lifestyle. And that could mean different for everyone. I mean, some people, they wake up, do their devotion, pray, they sing or whatever, right? But I'm not that type of person. I I may or may not do devotion in the morning or read my Bible every day, but I make sure to do something throughout the day, or even just a short prayer, to keep it as a daily reminder that, you know, because that's really who I am. It's truly, God has created me here for a purpose on this world. And I think also historically I was never open about my faith too, and I wish I was. But
mm.
now that I'm being open about my faith through this new book coming out, and I'm very bold in faith on this book, and that's what I want it to be with the publisher, is now I'm getting feedback, because I probably have a lot of people that I know that are non-believers, but now I have people coming up to me saying, "Oh yeah, that does make sense. That completely makes sense." They're like, "Oh, I always saw something in you, but I didn't know what was the uniqueness of you." And they're like, "Oh, I even had a good conversation, actually a good podcast recording with one of my good mentors, who never really thought about faith, and now he's actually thinking about what faith is all about and how can he incorporate it in his life and his son's life." And because his parents were so so strong in faith. So it's been opening up a lot of good conversations.
Well, we don't want to give it all away, but what do you hope that the readers take away from this book?
I think really learning from someone else's story. I think that's really, it's like I said earlier, this is not the five steps to success, or how to find your purpose or calling. It's really learning from a person's story. And so this story starts in high school and goes through, I think, up to my early 20s. And so it's just learning how I navigated through those years, how I came to find, what I wanted to do, experiences in college, post college. And that's really it, just learning from someone else's story. And I try to make it authentic as possible, is because no one's story is perfect, and it doesn't have to be. Like even us recording this podcast, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep,
I think even though we
because it
try,
won't be.
it won't be. We try, but I think just showing my authentic self and putting it out there and hoping that someone can learn from the message, This is a bit cheesy, but if it can help one, that makes it all worth it. But I know it's going to help more than one person. And there's a group of people reading the book right now, and I hope it's helping create some more perspectives.
So just so we're clear, who is the audience you wrote this book for?
Well, that was very interesting because I initially thought the audience was going to be for, like young professionals, young emerging leaders, students. But now I'm finding that the church has been interested in this message. And so I think it's more of a larger audience than I initially thought. But it's really for someone that is a young person that is really looking to learn from someone that has had an experience through high school, college years, a little bit of post college, just learning from another story. And it's not like the follow these steps and you'll be successful, but it's I think it's just learning. I think the more people you can learn from, and the more people, more stories you can learn from, the better you'll be.
Yeah.
I think because even us, Travis, we read books from all people, and it's like you buy a $20 book and you read their life story and learn from it,
Right.
and some takeaways from it. So hope that this creates just one perspective.
So as we kind of wrap up here, what's next for you? What do you have on the agenda for the after this book launches?
Oh, that is book 2.
Book 2.
Book 2. So I'm actually already in the process of sort of brainstorming, well, trying to brainstorm book 2. And that's just going to be a progression of where the book stops. So it's going to be really going through the journey. Mainly it's going to touch on my transition into a leadership role. And so I discuss, you probably know some of those experiences, Travis. So early on in my leadership journey and how that journey was. So it's still going to be for the same audience, for young people that are transitioning into leadership roles, and how to navigate and discover through that aspect. So I'm looking forward. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'm planning on getting that message out.
How can you purchase the book?
Yeah, you can purchase it at CameronSinghBook.com. So the website is CameronSinghBook.com. You could purchase. You got the paperback book, which is, of course, will be signed by your very own study guide, and then the audiobook. And actually, in the future, it is going to go out on Audible, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, Cameron, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your book.
Well, thank you, Travis. This was kind of different from what we're used to, but
yeah,
appreciate you interviewing me for the book.
Thanks, Cameron.
Well, this was an awesome interview that I had with my good friend Travis. It was awesome to just share my story a little bit and truly give you more insights on the heart behind navigation and discovery. And I really hope that you can get a copy of the book or gift this message to someone that really you feel might need this. There's a lot of ways you can purchase the book. It's on all platforms: Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's on Audible, Apple Books. But if you want to purchase it directly through me and get a signed copy, check out my website, CameronSinghBook.com. Again, the website is CameronSinghBook.com. And there you have study guide available. You can purchase bundles if you want to gift this to people. So feel free to check that out, and I really appreciate your support in really helping get this message out and really help transform lives that it needs to. Really thank you for you listening to this episode of Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. And if you really enjoyed this, feel free to give a review on whichever platform you're listening on. And also, if you find this can be helpful to someone else, share it on social media, give it a shout out, and would greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening. And again, grab your copy of Navigation and Discovery at CameronSinghBook.com. Really hope you enjoy this episode, and catch you on the next one.